Okay, so welcome to junior groups. Appreciate you guys giving up part of your SRT. And I think that the information that we're going to cover today is very pertinent regarding the college process. I think it's a really good time to meet. Typically, we used to meet in January. We moved this back a month just so that we could start getting you thinking about what you should be doing regarding the college process and some of the things that are coming up, including testing and where you should be kind of in this process. My name is Mr. Klass. I'm the Director of College Counseling. It's my 15th year at Glenbrook South. Before becoming the Director of College Counseling, I was a generalist, a counselor. Prior to coming to Glenbrook South, I was actually at Lake Forest College working in college admissions. So I've been on both sides of the desk, I think, which gives me kind of a unique perspective in terms of this, just understanding this whole process and hopefully helping you to understand this process better. I want this to be as informal as possible. So if you guys have questions about any of the things that we put up here in the slide, just raise your hand, ask the questions. I'll stop sometimes just to clarify things too, things that I think you might have more questions about than others on some of these slides. So the first one that I want to start with is our counseling news for the class of 2016. And if you look up there, you'll see a variety of different statistics. The one that I really want to draw your attention to is if you look on the bottom left-hand side there, that our students applied to an average of 5 schools. And the reason that I think this statistic is important is because as you start to think about this process, you might hear different things from your friends, or you might hear different things in the community in terms of what's normal regarding the college application process. And sometimes you might hear students that apply to 20, 30 schools. I want you to know that the historical average has been 5. And as long as I've been here for 15 years, this hasn't changed. Okay, this is a historical average. And I can say working on the college admissions side, it hasn't changed in 20 years. So again, the average student's going to apply to about 5 schools. My recommendation would be about 6 to 8 schools, that a student applies to. So really close to kind of our historical average. And I would say my college counseling colleagues in this area, across the country, it's the same. That doesn't change. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's a process involved in terms of the application process. And I think you can add a lot of stress if you find yourself applying to too many schools, trying to keep track of all the information that you need in terms of the application process. So I think it's an important number to just kind of keep in mind to normalize this process. Here's the 10 schools, the top 10 schools that our students decided to attend last year, not necessarily apply, but decided to attend last year. And really, they're not necessarily in order other than the top 2. You'll see there's certainly a Midwest influence as you look at these schools up here. 78% of our students do stay in the Midwest, although our students do look all over the country. We have students in California, we have students in Maine, we have students in Georgia, we have students really all over the country, but our top schools are the ones that you see there, and some of those you may recognize and maybe some you don't. Oakton is always our top school that students attend, and the students attend Oakton for a variety of different reasons. Some students are just not sure in terms of what they want to do or the school that they want to go to, so they go to Oakton for 2 years and then they transfer successfully to a 4-year university. For other students, it's financial because the cost of college has skyrocketed over the last 10, 15 years, and so students decide on Oakton. And again, it's always our top school, and then U of I is usually second. Historically, U of I has always been that second school where our students have gone. And then the rest are not necessarily in order, but they stay pretty consistent from year to year. Some college admits that I want to, in terms of college admissions that I want to start with. This whole idea that it's better to get good grades and take challenging courses. And I'm guessing some of you have either thought about this question, or maybe you presented this question to your counselor in terms of, is it better to get an A in a regular course or get a B in an honors course? Okay, that's a question that oftentimes I've been asked as a college counselor. I was asked as a generalist. And here's one of the things that I want you to think about. Here's how I answer that question. Okay, colleges want to see a rigorous program. Okay, colleges want to see the most rigorous program that you can take. So if you're a student that thinks that you can handle let's say, for example, a 5th academic course, if you've only been taking 4 academics throughout your 3 years, and senior year, you want to take that, that additional academic course. that's adding rigor, okay? If you're a student that has gotten straight A's in regular courses and feel like you can push yourself to take that course, yeah, you might get a B in that course, maybe even might get a C in that course, but you are in a position to take that course, then you should take those courses. You should continue to challenge yourself. It can actually be a detriment. I've had students that have straight A's and they apply to a school and the school kind of wonders, why didn't that student push themselves a little bit more within the curriculum? Because every school asks for a profile. Every school is going to ask for Glenbrook South's profile. They're going to take a look at the courses that we offer, and they want to see a student challenge themselves within that curriculum. So rigorous curriculum is really, really important in that college process. So that's how I would answer that question. I think you need to do a self-assessment and think to yourself, should I be taking that risk? Okay, and oftentimes you probably should. Okay, I think the reason that people don't take that risk is because they're afraid, well, it's going to hurt my GPA a little bit. Well, there can be reward on the other end for taking those risks. Okay, all schools will look at the program and rate the program that a student's in. Okay, so even if your grade point average maybe drops a little bit, but you've taken that honors course, you've taken that AP course, or again, you've gone from 4 to 5 academics, that changes the program rating that you're going to get at some of the schools as they look at admitting you or not admitting you. Okay, so I think it's really an important question to ask and answer. Standardized tests are more important than your high school grades. Here's another question I think that we get asked a lot, and I think students will come in to my office oftentimes really excited about a test score that has skyrocketed. Meanwhile, their grade point average hasn't moved at all, or maybe even the grade point average has moved negatively since the last time that they came into my office. And oftentimes students will come in with an with an escalated ACT score, and they want to know what new options it opens up. But the GPA, again, hasn't moved at all, or it's moved in a negative fashion. And again, the most important thing that you're going to do are the courses that you take and the grades that you get within that. In fact, statistically, an article just came out talking about the importance of grades versus test scores. And when they asked colleges and universities to rate grades versus test scores, 80% of schools said that grades were of considerable importance when they look at admitting a student. That same survey had 55.7% say that test scores were of considerable importance. So again, are test scores important? Absolutely. Do you have to take them? Yes. Okay, are you going to submit them? Yes. Okay, but is it going to be more important than your grades? No. Is it going to compensate for poor grades? Not necessarily. Okay. I need to decide on a career before I can choose a college. And this kind of goes back to that whole, trying to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life as you sit here now as 17, or 18-year-old students. And for many of you, you may have an idea. For others, you have no idea what you want to do. Okay? Some of you may think you know what you want to do, but you get into college, change your major, you decide to go a different route, and that's okay. Right? That's why I think it's important to find a school that's a good fit, to find a school that you're going to graduate within 4 years, to find a school that's going to allow you to grow, to challenge you and grow, that you're going to feel comfortable and be able to be involved in that particular school. So again, are there specific majors that you need to be looking at schools for? Yeah, for example, engineering, right? If you're really thinking about doing engineering and the school doesn't offer engineering, well, then you don't want to go to that particular school. But if you're not sure what you want to do, there's a lot of schools that offer a variety of different majors that you can take and you can move throughout the year. Plus, who knows in 5 years what jobs or even technology jobs are even available. Those jobs may not exist as you sit here today. And when you start to get into college in terms of those hot tech jobs, some of those jobs that might be available. Other common myths: I can't get into a college if you did poorly in 9th or 10th grade. So let's say you had a rocky start transitioning to Glenbrook South and freshman year didn't go the way you would have liked it to go. Okay? You still have a great opportunity to work on that upward trend in your GPA. And schools reward those upward trends in GPA. So if you started off kind of slow and you're improving over your sophomore, junior and senior year, you still have a great opportunity to get into a good school. One of the things that I will caution is this, okay? If your GPA is trending upwards, but your academic courses and rigor is trending downward, okay, that's not necessarily a good thing. You have a lot of students that will come in and They're excited about the fact that their GPA has improved over the last couple of years. But then when we look at the academic courses that they're taking, the academic courses have not improved. Okay? In fact, they've taken a downward trend. And I really caution you on that. In fact, about 16, 17 years ago, I was working with a student where I met with that student at a particular high school, and they were really interested in going to Lake Forest College where I happened to work. And so I said, okay, let's take a look at your senior year courses. So we sat down and I looked at the senior courses. The student had 2 academic courses in their senior year. Okay, so this is like October, November. And I had to be really honest with that student and tell that student, 2 academic courses is really hard, even if you got straight A's in everything that you're doing. It's really hard for me to evaluate your potential on 2 academic courses in your senior year. Okay, so I want you to think about as you start to meet with your counselors in the next couple of months to register your courses for senior year. Sometimes you don't know where you're going to be. You don't know if you're going to be on that edge for that particular school. So give yourself that chance to show the school that you're serious about your academic studies. If I haven't heard of the college, it can't be very good. I like this one too because I think this is a great myth out there. Because if I asked you to name schools, maybe you could come up with 10 or 15 schools that you've heard of, or schools that we just put on that list that are noteworthy, kind of in the Midwest. But there's thousands of colleges out there. There's several thousand colleges out there, and one of the things that I would encourage you to do is just keep an open mind as you start to think about this process and the colleges that are out there and the opportunities that they can afford you. I'll give you a quick example of a kind of a success story about an article that I was just recently reading. All of you know about Starbucks. All of you probably have driven by a Starbucks, bought a drink from Starbucks, or at least know Starbucks exists. Well, the CEO of Starbucks is a man named Howard Schultz. You may or may not know that. Okay, and he's been very, as you can imagine, a very successful CEO of Starbucks and moving that company forward. Well, Howard Schultz grew up in the Bronx in New York, in a very Jewish community, and as he started to look at colleges, he was actually a football player, so he was a recruited athlete. But Northern Michigan came onto his radar. Now, if I ask some of you whether or not you've heard of Northern Michigan, maybe some of you would raise your hand. Others you would say, never heard of it. It's a school in the upper UP. It's a moderately selective school. It's not a school that, it's probably right around the average. The average selectivity rate, by the way, nationally is 65.8%, okay, which is a very reasonable rate in terms of admission. Okay, that's the national rate. So Howard Schultz goes to Northern Michigan, and in talking about his success now as a CEO, he attributes a lot of his success to going to a place that for him was very foreign to start off with, because he didn't know a lot about Northern Michigan when he went there. But by going to a place where, again, he didn't have this large Jewish population that he grew up in, it really helped shape him as a person, and it helped him grow more and understand different cultures and grow as a person. Here he is in the Midwest now, kind of in a totally different environment. And he talks about that attributed, to his success, contributing to his success later on in his life and being a successful CEO. So my point here is that, keep an open mind as you start to look at these schools, and don't close off a school maybe because you haven't heard of it. Do some exploring and make sure that you're educating yourself on all those options that are out there. The last two I'll go over pretty quickly. Extracurricular activities will compensate for poor grades. Again, if you're involved in a lot of activities but your grades are trending downwards, it might be time to reprioritize those activities and think about the ones that you really want to do. But if it's taking away from your studies, you might want to think about certainly narrowing some of those options outside. And then the last one, your life will be ruined if you are not admitted to your first choice college. And this is one we get a lot, I think, in the admissions or in the college counseling office, where students come in, they didn't get into that, what they have put on a pedestal as their dream school, the only school where they can possibly be successful at, and they think that their life is going to be ruined. And I can tell you, because I meet with a lot of students when they come back after the break, those students end up being very happy at the schools that they choose. And 96% of our students last year, 96.6, went on to college. Okay, so we have a very high percentage of our students going on to college. Okay, and being very happy at the college that they go to, the college they're accepted to. I will say this: I think if you do the process correctly, you shouldn't just have one dream school. You should have 4 or 5. I mean, ultimately, that's your goal. You should have 4 or 5 schools that you really have researched and that you really would be very happy at if you get into those schools, and then the ball's in your court. Then you get to decide. and you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Okay, so what are colleges really looking for? If I had to put, and I don't have percentages up here, but this would kind of be most important to least important. And they're all important, but they would have a different percentage attached to them, right? So the first one is transcript, right? Your transcript is going to be the most important thing that you do over the course of 4 years, okay? Because it is a 4-year process, okay? Which is why we go back a little bit to testing. Testing is a snapshot of what you can do. You go in, you take a test, okay? The transcript is going to show a school what type of student you are academically, okay? So I want you to think of the transcript as being your narrative. So you're writing this narrative over the course of 4 years, who you are as a freshman, who you are as a sophomore, who you are as a junior, who you are as a senior. Are you willing to take risk, within your classes? What type of student? Are you a consistent student? Are you an up and down student? Okay, where are you headed? What is this? We talk about trend. Where are you headed in terms of that trend? Okay, those are things that admission officers, that's how they read those applications. So when they sit down and they read your application, that's how they're going to look at those. And so it's really important that you think strongly about how do you want that narrative to read to those admission professionals. And when you meet with your counselor in a couple of months to schedule your classes, make sure that you're really thinking about how am I best represented by this narrative, by this transcript. Okay. Number 2 is certainly test scores. Every student's going to have to submit a college entrance exam. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The student essay, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities. The last one, the explanation for a drop in grades. So if you have a situation where you missed a considerable amount of school and your grades were impacted, okay, it could be for a family situation that happened. It could be for illness, okay, whatever that reason, you want to make sure you explain that to a school, and that's okay. I mean, if you have a blip in your grades, let's say you were, an A, B, C student, and then all of a sudden you get to a period of your life where something happened and you see a drop and you got C's and D's during that time, maybe that semester, but then the next semester those grades come back up, okay? Those need to be explained. And schools will forgive that. Schools are understanding. Even if now your GPA doesn't quite fit into the GPA of a school that you might be thinking about, I would still encourage you to apply to that school. Because if you took that little blip out, okay, you'd be a much different student. And you can explain those, okay? Now, if you have an illness, and you're a CD student and you have an illness and you still get CDs, okay, that's not going to have as much impact, all right? Or conversely, if you're an AB student and you have an illness and you're still getting A's and B's, you don't necessarily obviously have to explain that. The last one is this build a class. And this is one that I think it's important for you to think about because it releases a little bit of that control that you want to have on this process. Because the bottom line is sometimes this process is a little bit beyond anybody's control, okay? And especially as you start to look at the more selective schools, right? The more selective a school is, the more they have control over this process of building a class. They can literally sit down, it's called institutional priorities. They can sit down before the year as a staff and decide what they want in that particular school. They can get that selective, okay? Now, is that frustrating as an applicant? Absolutely, because you might have the grades, you might have the test scores, you might do everything that you can possibly do to get into that school, but yet you get a rejection letter from that school. And I think internally, a lot of students internalize that and think, well, I'm not good enough for that school. It has nothing to do with whether or not you're good enough at that school. All of you could do the work at that school, I guarantee it, okay? It's called institutional priorities. They have the ability to go out and look and shape that class exactly as they want. And so that gets a little, I think, frustrating sometimes for students. Yeah, question.
Are that mean like percentages of like races and like genders and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Institutional priorities can be socioeconomic goals. It could be geographic goals. Okay, yeah, exactly. It's a great question. Okay, now you could be on the benefit there as well, right? I mean, if it's a school on the East Coast that wants Midwest kids, maybe it's a school in the South that wants to attract more Midwest kids. You could be on the positive side of that. Okay, so it could work out positively or negatively. But I think the thing that I want you to hear from this is that control piece. Because so many people come into my office, they're so stressed out by trying to figure out that process. And sometimes, unfortunately, you just don't have control over that. Okay, testing. This is the one that I know we're going to spend some time on because testing has changed a little bit. The process has changed just slightly. Let me ask this question before I go on. How many of you are solely planning on taking the SAT? In other words, you're gonna focus on the test prep, and that's the test that you're gonna take maybe a couple of times as your college entrance exam. So the SAT. How many of you are planning on solely concentrating on the SAT? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, a couple of you. Okay. How about the ACT? I'm guessing it's the other majority. Okay. And I would say that's about what I've seen from most of the classes that I've taught. That most students are still, in your class, still sticking with the ACT. I want you to understand, either one is fine. There's been a lot of talk in the community, I've had a lot of questions asked about which test should I be taking? Which test are colleges going to take? There's a lot of parents that have wondered whether or not, because the state is going to mandate that you take the SAT, that the schools in Illinois are only going to allow for an SAT as the college admission exam. The bottom line is you can take any exam you want, ACT or SAT, and submit it to a college. There will be no preference by any college in the country, the entire country. Okay, it's really up to you in terms of your comfort level with that test. I will say, because most of you have been taking the ACT or doing ACT prep already, you're going to continue on that ACT path, and that's fine. You'll have to take the SAT as part of the state mandated test in April here at Glenbrook South. If you get a better score on the SAT and you want to send that in, you can do that as well. For those of you who might be just doing the SAT, great. Continue to focus on the SAT, learn the strategies for that test, and take that test a few times. Okay? One of those being the state mandated test that you're going to have here at Glenbrook South that you can register for. All other tests, other than the April 5th SAT that's going to be given here at Glenbrook South, you have to register for on your own. Okay? Those are national tests, and you have to register on your own. You have to either go to College Board or ACT.org, and you have to register for those tests. Okay? Questions that you guys have about testing? Specific questions about ACT, SAT, yeah.
If like colleges don't like prefer like either one, like you can choose, then why are we like mandated to like do this?
That's a good question. So the state uses those tests as data. And so in the past, the state has partnered with ACT in the past. And probably territorial, and this is more information you need, but territorial, the ACT is based in Iowa. So it's a Midwest company, whereas College Board, I think, is in New York. So it's part of it has been territorial. So it's a contract with the state. Now, last year there was no contract, so the state didn't pay for an ACT or an SAT. Okay, but SAT basically won the contract with the state of Illinois. And to be honest, Michigan has also gone from ACT to SAT. So it's more of a battle between companies, okay, than it is anything else. Okay, it hasn't changed the scope of college admissions at all. You can still take either one of those tests. It's just that the state has decided to partner with the SAT as the state mandated test at this point. So it's a requirement. It will go on your transcript. I can't tell you what it's going to look like. So that's another question that people have asked. What is this going to look like, the SAT? Because the state mandated SAT has to go on your transcript. I don't know what that's going to look like in terms of a number. It could be a 1600 number like the SAT. It could be yes, I've taken the SAT as a state mandated test. I can't tell you when the scores would even go on the transcript. They could be on a final transcript. It could be on a transcript that goes earlier. None of that has been determined yet. Okay? None of that has been determined yet. Yes?
So, do you pick both, or
What's that?
do you just want to pick one, or if you pick both?
So here's the question. So do you want to just pick one, or can you pick both? Here's my only advice that I would caution. I wouldn't try to straddle two platforms. In other words, the time that you're going to need to invest in ACT or SAT prep, how many of you have already taken some prep courses? Just a quick show of hands. Okay? It takes some time, right? Okay? When you factor it into your academics, your extracurricular activities, and then you want to have some resemblance of a social life, right? It's test prep's going to take up some time. I would caution you a little bit about trying to do ACT and SAT test prep at the same time. because I think that would take away from your academics, and we know that your transcript is the most important thing. So I think it's about priorities. Okay. Now, if you take the ACT a couple times and then you take the SAT in April and you go, you know what, that would seem like an easier test for me. Then maybe you want to put your energy into the SAT. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't straddle the platform at the same time. Does that make sense? So that's my advice, for you. I think our sophomores going to be in a different situation because they're going to take a PSAT 10, and then they're going to potentially take the PSAT. So they'll have taken several tests that look like the SAT. So that shift may happen with our next class. But for you guys, you haven't had as much familiarity with the SAT. So it makes sense if you feel comfortable with the ACT, go ahead and continue with that, with that form. Other questions about testing? I've got a few slides up here that I'll show. So here's just a few differences between the two tests. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. You can Google these differences. The ACT is out of 36 and the SAT is out of 1600. The way that the tests look in terms of what they're testing is a little different. There's not a science section per se on the SAT. However, science is covered in the SAT and part of the evidence-based reading section. And to be honest, the ACT is very similar to that. I mean, the science part of the ACT is not as technical as it is reading comprehension. Okay. Just a couple of other slides up here in terms of, there's a little bit more time for questions on the SAT in terms of the time that you get to answer those questions. The math portion of the SAT has changed quite considerably. There's more algebra on there. There's less geometry. There's less obscure math. It's really more tied to the math curriculum of high schools. Okay, and again, all of you will get a chance to see that new revised SAT in April. Here is a testing schedule, and so I put this up there because some of you have already started to take some tests. Others of you may have not started this testing schedule, and that's okay. I think it's perfectly fine to wait until the second semester of your junior year to start this process because you have plenty of time. My recommendation is to at least take it twice because I think the first time that you take it, there is some familiarizing yourself with just the timing of the test. Okay, it is achievement test, so it is technically kind of testing where you're at and what you've learned. But certainly there are some idiosyncrasies in terms of taking this test. So I would advise at least taking it a couple of times. So, you could take the April test and the June test and have two tests, which would be great. You could take the February test and the April test and be fine. You could take the February, April, and June if you wanted to take it 3 times. Again, talking about the ACT. Okay, same with the SAT. It pretty much mirrors the ACT in terms of when it's offered. So you can certainly do that same kind of time frame. Then in your senior year, you'll still have opportunities to take both of these tests. There's an opportunity to take the ACT in April. There's an opportunity to take the SAT in October. Those are fine for meeting any deadlines. So any of the deadlines that are out there, even the early November 1st deadlines, you will be fine. So, if you push this thing into the first semester of your senior year because you don't have time in your junior year, you will have plenty of time to take those tests and make them count for the college admissions part. Okay? Any questions on testing schedules? Okay. Test prep. So some of you have probably used some outside test prep. Hopefully some of you have maybe looked at our inside test prep. Here's the companies that we contract with, and the reasons that we do that is really from a cost standpoint. We're going to offer you the most cost-effective options. The private options out there, great. If you found some great private options, fantastic, use them. I would caution you about the price because I think price can fluctuate with some of those outside resources. I've heard people paying upwards of $10,000 to $15,000 for test prep. I think that's a little insane in terms of that price. That's a small scholarship, okay, that you could have at a particular school. Glenbrook courses, they begin January 23rd for the SAT, and if you're going to look at ACT, they would begin February 8th. You can register down at the bookstore. You can come down to the College and Career Center to pick up information on that. It's also on the website under College and Career Center and test prep options. Okay, one-to-ones, the other one that we contract with, are a not-for-profit organization that we bring in. They come in on Saturdays and Sundays. They will start, as you see there, January 21st and 22nd. I think it's $385 for 10 sessions. Okay, so it's, pretty reasonable when you factor that out per session. Okay, those are group sessions. You go to one-to-one learning to sign up for that program, or again, you can go to our website and sign up through the College and Career Center under test prep options. Naviance Test Prep, that's free. That's in your Naviance account. Does anybody in here use the Naviance Test Prep free icon? Did anybody know that it was there? Okay, now you know. So in Naviance, if you click on Naviance, you'll see something that says Naviance Test Prep. You can go in. We pay a lot of money for this as a district to offer this free resource for you. I had a young lady in the class that I just taught last raised her hand who's tried it, who really liked it. I think if you've got a lot of self-discipline, it's a great opportunity to get on there and use that. Khan Academy, if you're going to do the SAT, and I know a lot of you didn't raise your hand for that being kind of as your test prep option, but Khan Academy also offers a wonderful free test prep option. So if you want to look at Khan Academy, that's another great option for you to look at. The essay. I know this seems like light years away, but in 6 months, 7 months, you're definitely going to be consumed with writing the college essay or writing several college essays. And one of the things that I want to let you know is we have a lot of help here for you at Glenbrook South. We bring in a retired English teacher, Mr. Reuter, who will be down the TLC to help students with kind of generating topics or choosing topics to write on. Editing help. There's also tutors down in the TLC that can help you with that editing help. Your English teachers will be available to help you with that college essay. Your counselors, myself. Okay, so there's a lot of help out there to get you started and going with the college essay process. One of the things that I would mention is think about starting this process early. You can start and look on websites of colleges. You can look at the Common App prompts. You can look at the University of California system prompts. Okay, California just changed this past year, so I doubt they're going to change again. So you can get on and you can start looking at these prompts and over the summer, start writing these prompts so you're not so, start writing these essays so you're not so stressed out when you come back in the fall. Over the summer is a great time to attempt this. And I wrote a couple of just, bullet points up there in terms of what do they want to see. The college essay is another opportunity to differentiate yourself from other students. Okay? So your transcript gives one narrative of who you are, but now the college essay is another opportunity for you to write another narrative about who you are, what makes you tick, what kind of jumps off the page, again, that differentiates you from other students. It should be a reflective piece. Every conference that I've gone to regarding the college essay, it talks about this should be a reflective piece about who you are. Be careful about writing about, an experience too much and talking about that experience. Or writing about a great aunt or uncle or parent and not talking enough about you and what you're going to bring to that particular campus. And allowing that admission officer to get to know who you are. Okay? So again, we'll have a lot of help with the college essay. This was an interesting article that if you have a chance to read the article in its entirety, it's worth a quick read. It's less than 6 or 7 paragraphs. But Frank Bruni is a writer for the New York Times. His kind of sole purpose is to kind of de-escalate the whole college process because he feels like it's gotten a little out of hand. This article was in response to a time when there were all these articles about some of these affluent parents that were actually founding these organizations so that their students could go and work in these underprivileged areas so that they could have an opportunity to write about this in their college essay. And basically, this article, and there's some great admission officers commenting at some pretty selective schools in here, but basically commenting on the fact that you don't have to go to Botswana and work in an orphanage to have an impact on society and to have an impactful experience that you might write in an essay. One of the admission officers talks about a student that worked at a YMCA, 10 minutes from their school, and the impact that particular student had on the children that student worked with at that YMCA. That can be as impactful, and you can have as much of a reflective experience 10 minutes away from home than going to Botswana or going to Africa. You can have some of those same experiences. So I would encourage you to read that article because I think it's a really good one, and it brings to light kind of, some of this service piece and the college essay piece. Teacher versus council letter of recommendation. So you're all going to have an opportunity to invite, most likely, a teacher to write a letter of recommendation for you. You start thinking about that now, even though it seems like the application is light years away. But you're going to most likely ask a teacher from your junior year or maybe the first semester of your senior year. Colleges want to see those academic letters from your most recent teachers. So as you start to think about someone who can write a good letter of recommendation, it's okay to start maybe tapping that teacher here in the spring, saying, hey, would you be willing to write me a letter of recommendation? I'll follow up with you in the fall with the specifics about writing it, but would you be willing to write the letter of recommendation for me? And when you think about the teacher that's going to write the letter of recommendation, think about a teacher that can write anecdotally about who you are as a student. I can't tell you how many times I hear that word when I talk to college admission professionals in terms of what they want to see in a letter of recommendation from a teacher. They want to see a story about who you are as a student. So think about those teachers that can write about something that you've done that kind of goes above and beyond just coming to class every day and sitting in class. Yes, question.
So can you not use a sophomore teacher if you had a really good sophomore?
So can you use a sophomore teacher? If that's a last resort, yes. But I can tell you, again, most teachers want to see, or most college universities want to see junior or senior as a priority. Because it's who it's who you are, most currently. So that's what they would say. So if you don't have a junior or senior teacher that you can identify, can you go back to a sophomore teacher? Yes. But again, I wouldn't prioritize that over a junior or senior teacher yet.
Wait, so you have to use a teacher, or even a counselor, you can't use anyone else?
That's a good question. Do you have to use a teacher or can you use somebody else? So most schools will allow others, okay? But don't confuse others with an academic teacher, okay? Schools want to see who you are in the classroom first and foremost, okay? What's the number one thing that every school is going to look at? What's the most important thing? Go back to slide 4. It's the most important thing they're going to look at for admissions. Grades, transcript, right? Okay, so now they want to corroborate that with who you are in that classroom. Okay, so academic teachers are the most important things that they're going to want. Every school is going to want at least one. The schools that require them are going to want 1 or 2 academic first. Then you can have your debate coach, or then you can have your pastor, or then you can have someone else write on your character. But the bottom line is they want to know who you are as a student. They want to know how you're going to be in their classrooms. It's the most important thing. Okay, so it's a really important thing. And then your counselor will write more about that global experience. Okay, more about that global experience, who you are outside the classroom, what you do in the community, and activities that you're involved in. The why versus the what. This gets into kind of activities. So activities that you're involved in. The question about how many. Okay, I would answer this question more in terms of depth. Okay, I think it's more important to be involved in 1 or 2 activities where you are moving that group forward, where you're showing that you have a passion for that particular club or activity, where you've gained some kind of a leadership experience within that club or organization, where you've done something other than just show up to that club or organization. Those are going to be more important. To have 1 or 2 of those as opposed to 10 that you list on there that you're just basically showing up to, that's going to be more influential to an admission committee. Okay? In fact, the Common App only allows you to put 10 activities on there. And a lot of discussion has been made to even limit that because they don't want students just showing up and joining something just to join something because it looks good on a resume. You should be joining things because you have a really demonstrated interest in those particular organizations. So this kind of gets into that whole why versus what. Okay? Depth of the experience. Life outside school. I would start to maybe try to keep a track of the things that you're involved in because you will have to put these on a college application, and it will really save you some time if you do that now while you're in the process of that. Again, you don't have to. It's just a recommendation to try to save you some time when it comes to filling out those college applications. There's actually a resume feature in Naviance where you can go in and you can put in the hours that you're involved in these different activities because you're going to have to put those things into a college application. So I would just caution you before you get too far removed from some of those to start tracking some of those things. We talked about colleges looking to build a class already. Let's go to visiting campuses. I think ultimately this is one of the most important things that you will do. My advice would be to try to, between now and June, identify 10 to 15 schools, 10 to 12 schools that you're genuinely interested in, that you think it meets kind of your academic criteria, Maybe it meets the location that you're interested in. It meets the financial criteria. Maybe it meets the type of students that are there. It meets the type of campus, whether it's urban or suburban. But you start to identify some things that you would like to see in a campus. Okay? And then you start to visit some of these campuses. And you keep a journal about the things that you liked about the campus and disliked. I can't tell you the number of times that I meet with a student that says, when I put my feet on that campus, that's when I felt that this was the right campus for me. Okay? And I think that the more that you can get out and visit some of these campuses, the better. Now, when you visit campus, I think you get a great sense of the academics, the student body, the campus style, social life. I would also try to sit in on the class. I think visiting classes is very important because it gives you kind of a sense of what does it feel like to sit in a large lecture hall? What does it feel like to sit in a smaller classroom with maybe 20 or 30 students? How engaged are the students? How serious are the students? Is this the type of learning environment that I want to be in? And all you need to do is call an admissions office. It's not real scary to set up an appointment. Call the admissions office. Ask them when their visit days are. Okay? If you have a spring break trip planned, or if you meet with me and you tell me, hey, I'm going to be in a certain part of the country, can you recommend some schools? I can do that for you. Okay? That's what I do as a for my job. I love trying to put some schools on your radar to go take a look at. Okay, so spring break's a great time. When we have days off here for Institute Days, those are other great opportunities to visit. Remember, the college season ends at about the second week of May for most schools. So it's not as long as you think. Right? You basically have from now until the beginning of May. And really, May starts exam time. So schools aren't really lively during that time. So you really have about 4 months to start to visit some of those schools. And you can certainly visit them in the fall, too. Visit the placement office. That's a great place to stop. I think sometimes, we underestimate, you're a consumer. You're the consumer. Ask those hard questions, okay? Ask those questions about placement rates. Ask about recruiting. Who comes to campus to recruit? What's your average graduation rate at the end of 4 years? Not 6 years, because they'll all promote their 6-year graduation rate. But what's the 4-year graduation rate? Okay, be a smart consumer. Ask those questions. When you're on the tours, okay, they're going to show you a lot of different things, right? They're going to show you the dorm room that's all set up there on the left. Okay, it looks very nice. It's set up, okay, but only seniors live in that room, and that's what you're going to be living in as a freshman. Okay, or there's going to be a huge upcharge for living in that dorm. Ask those questions about where am I really going to live when I come to campus. Okay, what's the reality? Okay, get off the beaten path. Don't just ask the ambassador that's walking you around, that's trained to tell you, statistics. Ask another student that's walking on the path. Pull them aside. Hey, just real quick, what do you like about this school? What do you dislike about this school? What other schools were you looking at when you were looking at some schools? It can really open your eyes to an unbiased view of that particular school. Virtual tours. If you can't get to the campus, I think virtual tours are another great opportunity. A lot of websites now, college websites have virtual tours that you can click onto. You can also go to UVisit, where we are working on some headsets down in the College and Career Center that will allow you a virtual tour experience where you put these on, and then you can go to campuses and you can walk around and get a full virtual tour. And I'll send out an email through Naviance once those become available if you want to come and try those out. But this is kind of where we're moving towards. Even though physically you can't get to a campus, you have an opportunity to do it online. What I would say, just to get started, okay, start to visit some of the local options around here to get a flavor for some of the different types of schools that are out there. A lot of students that I meet with will tell me when I ask them about the size of the school, so there's small, 1 to 2,000. There's medium, kind of 2 to 3,000 and above to maybe about 15,000. And then there's large, okay? Right? But a lot of students will tell me, I don't want to look at any school that's less than Glenbrook South. Well, you're discounting a lot of schools out there, a lot of great schools out there. And unless you visited a small school to see what that offers, I would encourage you, again, to explore. And maybe you don't like a small school, but if you've never been on a small school campus, don't just attribute to the fact that it's going to be like Glenbrook South. It's going to be nothing like Glenbrook South, most likely, because Glenbrook South's pulling from Glenview, okay? These smaller schools are pulling from all over the country, okay? Physically, the space looks different. You're not in one building all the time. So again, I would encourage you just to take a look at some of the other options that are out there. You go visit Lake Forest or North Central to get an idea of that small school. Go down and visit University of Illinois. Even if the University of Illinois is not on your list, but you're looking at big public schools, just go and visit U of I and walk around. Do you like the fact that you might have to take buses to different parts of the campus? Do you like the fact that you're sitting in a big lecture hall? Does that freak you out? If it does, you might want to look at more of a mid-sized school like a Northwestern or a Bradley. That's more in that 7,000-8,000 range. Okay, so I think there's a lot of local options just to get started that will help you out. Other hot topics. I'm not going to talk about admission plans right now because we'll do that senior year. But demonstrated interest is a really big one that I want you to be aware of. Demonstrated interest is your opportunity to show the school that you're interested in that school. And there's a few different ways that you can do that. How many of you visited college reps when they came in the fall this past? A couple of you, okay? And some of you probably didn't because you didn't necessarily know the schools that you're interested in. But we have over 200 reps that come to Glenbrook South every fall to present on their school. By meeting with those reps, that's called demonstrated interest. You fill out a card, they document that opportunity to visit with you, and that's considered demonstrated interest. Other ways to express demonstrated interest: visiting a campus, doing a campus interview with an admission officer if you're there, if they allow those. College fairs, okay? Opening your email, okay? A lot of these schools now have technology that track whether or not you open up an email. They send you an email, did you open it up? Okay? It's crazy, but that's where it's moving towards, all right? So those are all things, and you can ask a school whether or not they track demonstrate interest. They'll usually be they will be pretty transparent with you, okay? If they say, and some will say, yeah, it's really important. Others will say, well, we really don't track it. I don't know. I'd question some of those schools that say that they don't track demonstrated interest because I'm guessing behind the scenes they're looking at some data to try to gauge whether or not you're going to come to that school if they admit you. Okay, so that's the demonstrated interest piece. Student role in the college process. Again, start early. Try to identify 10 to 12 schools. You can do that using myself. If you come down and schedule an appointment in the College and Career Center, you can do it right from your Naviance account. So go to your Naviance account, click Schedule Appointment with a College Counselor. I would encourage you to bring your parents because I think it's always a beneficial meeting when we have your parents there. We're all on the same page. And then I'll give you a list of schools that I think are appropriate to go out and start to look at. You can talk to your counselors as well. So a lot of opportunities to get you going. I don't want you to sit back. Last year, I had a lot of students over the summer start to email me for appointments, and I don't work over the summer. And I felt bad that I couldn't meet with students. And then they come back in the fall. And to be honest, the fall's too late. If you're looking to try to develop a list in the fall, you're definitely behind the game. Because when you're looking at deadlines of November 1st for some schools, you get back basically almost in September. So you have September, October, that's not a lot of time to start to research schools and apply to schools. Okay? Communicate. Make sure you're talking to your parents and coming up with some guidelines of what makes sense for you in terms of schools that you can look at. So when you come in to have a meeting, try to be on the same page. I've had some awkward meetings where, the parents on one page and the students on the other page, and it's not a harmonious meeting, okay? I'd like for you all to be on the same page when you come in and we meet for those college meetings. Narrow your search. So the most successful students that I've worked with come back and have 6 to 8 schools that they're going to apply to by September. If you do your homework, you identify 10 to 12 schools, you start to research those schools between now and June. You come back in September with 6 to 8 schools you're going to apply to. This process will not be as daunting as everybody wants to make it out to be. Okay, it won't. I mean, if you follow that plan. I've made an application management chart that we'll talk about again senior year, but it's in the document library. The reason that I say 6 to 8 schools, because look at all the things that you have to keep track of. Whether or not they have essays. Do I have to do an essay for the school? Do I have to send recommendations to that school? Have I sent my ACT and SAT to those schools already? Have I requested the things that I need from teachers and counselors? Okay? So if you have a manageable list of schools, this process will go very smoothly. Last thing, I already talked about making an appointment. A couple things I want to point out that are coming up. We have a college fair. It's at GBN this year. It's on April 6th, so just put it in your calendar. Make sure that you save the date for that night. It's from 6:30 to 8:30. We'll have over 200 colleges come here, and it's a great opportunity for you just to get some general information about schools. I'm happy also to give you a list prior to that so that you know which schools to maybe go target. March 4th is going to be a really great day here. This is the first time that we've run this. It's going to be bringing in a variety of college speakers on a bunch of different college topics. things from institutional priorities, which I talked about before, demonstrated interest. We're going to have a college admission professional talk about case studies. So they're going to literally put out there several different case studies on why students get in and why students didn't get in, which I think is great for you guys to hear. It's going to be someone from the University of Chicago. We're going to have someone from another school talk about the college essay and things that you should be thinking about with the college essay. We're going to have 3 SEC schools present on some of the benefits of maybe looking at some SEC schools. We're going to have a session on big versus small. What are the benefits of big and small? We're going to have one on performing arts, one on NCAA. There's going to be a lot of great sessions. So my point is, put it down. It's from 10 to 2 on March 4th. And if you can be a part of that, I think, again, it just helps educate you a little bit more on that process. So, and again, if you can only come to 1 or 2 sessions, that's great. You want to come from 10 to 11 or 11:30, and you have something else to do, try to be a part of that. Make sure you're checking your email because we push our notifications through Naviance. So if something comes up, a program comes up, we'll send information through that. And the last thing I will say is you have junior Naviance groups on February 1st and 2nd. Your counselors will go over in depth how to use Naviance, how to do searches in Naviance, etc. That's all I have. I know I went about 5 minutes over. Appreciate your attention. If anybody has any questions, you can stick back, and have a great day.